Welcome to Blockbar. We bring you exciting stories from Dutch blockchain projects, companies and people because we think the world should know about these. Blockbar is about the passion and the vision of the people working on the various aspects of blockchain in the Netherlands. We are an open, not-for-profit community and we can only bring you this content with the help of donations and sponsors. If you want to sponsor us, feel free to contact us. Check our website, blockbar.nl. This episode is sponsored by MoveOpen, your partner for innovative blockchain concepts. Find out more about MoveOpen on moveopen.nl.
We are joined here today at Blockchain Innovation Week in The Hague with Rinke Hendriksen and Tim Bansemer. Thank you for joining us. We've had 2 presentations about RChain today, so we are already up to speed with everything around RChain. So now, Rinke, we start with you. Can you tell something about yourself and how you started with crypto?
Yes, sure. So my name is Rinke Hendriksen and I'm at the moment studying the Master of Science in Digital Currencies at the University of Nicosia. But besides that, obviously just studying a master is not enough if you want to know about cryptocurrencies and if you're really enthusiastic about it. So I'm just learning myself basically 12 hours a day about blockchain and engaging with people. But besides that, I'm also trying to become more of a developer. Like, I'm not a native developer, but right now I'm doing quite a lot of development and I'm focusing mainly on developing smart contracts. And I got involved with blockchain, I think about 5 years ago. At that time, the exchange Mt. Gox fell, and I thought, hey, that's interesting. And the price is down by quite a bit now. So just because I'm interested in it, let's just buy something. And since that time, I just got the knowledge. But I really got up to speed when I started my master, which is about 1 year ago.
Impressive. And for you, Tim?
Yeah, good question. I still ask myself a little bit that. Because I think blockchain technologies, I was not interested in cryptocurrencies. I was mainly interested in the infrastructure itself. So I have an infrastructure background, starting 2010, working as a network engineer. I then got hired in the top talent program for Checkpoint, working for one of the top IT security companies in the enterprise consulting business. During that time, I recognized it's nice to earn a lot of money. It's nice to see all the big companies, but actually I had the feeling that I couldn't really connect my brain and my abilities with what my heart was beating for, which was, since I started to look into complex systems, also looking into man-made complex systems like the banking system, like the international economic systems we have and the problems they create. So when I understood what blockchain was, it was for me a huge shift in my mind to actually see a path how we can rebuild society structures to fix things which are currently, I think, badly broken. So in last year, in June, I decided to fully dedicate my career to transition into the blockchain space and move away from the IT security space. Because I see the biggest chance here to connect my abilities and to influence the space in a direction that we get 2 things right, which is on the one side, getting a mission-critical global infrastructure where we can build society up on. So this means voting systems and financial systems, but in general, mission-critical infrastructure. And on the other side, that I can work on a dream as well, which is how can we do decentralized governance? So how can we get leaderless, wise decisions, which is also a requirement for the blockchain space itself. If we want to build decentralized infrastructure, how do we make decisions? How do we govern them? How do we put in code updates if we don't want to have a central team?
Cool. And so what would you say is RChain? Could you explain it to us what it is?
How I see RChain is a development on top of the blockchain protocols, which we already know. So blockchain started in 2008 with the major innovation of Bitcoin, and basically this innovation was getting consensus with a network of people whom you all don't know, but getting agreement on who owns what without having this central authority, which was done by the mining algorithm proof of work. And that works great. Bitcoin works up until now, but it's not so flexible. Like the only thing on what you can get consensus is on who owns what are the unspent transactions outputs. So Ethereum came along a couple of years after Bitcoin, and Ethereum, they thought, okay, once we get consensus on unspent transaction outputs, let's try to get consensus on the state of a virtual machine. Basically, Ethereum is like a computer running replicated on all the nodes, on all the Ethereum nodes. And these Ethereum nodes, they get consensus on all the transactions which happened, and in return, what this state of this computer is. And the state is composed of all the contracts and all the things which are sent to all these contracts. That's great. It was a very big innovation, because within this system you can have just array, and in this array you just keep all the account balances. So that's basically what Bitcoin had. But then RChain, how RChain fits into this picture is basically RChain asked themselves, so what kind of virtual machine do we have to get consensus on? And it turns out that basically Ethereum is a von Neumann machine, is like a Turing machine. And what a Turing machine does, it has a certain set of opcodes, certain set of actions which it can do. And it gets inputs, and it puts them all in a sequential order behind each other, and then it runs it, and you get a certain output. And Ethereum, all these opcodes, they get compiled into bytecode, and in the end, bytecode is what you put on the blockchain. But this von Neumann machine is sequential, and RChain is a different virtual machine which is concurrent. And this concurrency is very important for blockchain, because basically what concurrency is you can have multiple processes, multiple things happening at the same time, and influencing each other on the fly. And since this virtual machine is at the core of RChain, you get things like security and scalability. Yes. And also RChain is sustainable because it works with proof of stake.
Thank you. I think this was like a lot of details which I would also name when I speak about RChain. Especially I want to go one step back again to Ethereum and to compare that a little bit more, because I think most of the audience can relate to Ethereum, and then it's easier for them to understand the differences or the opportunities. But for me, it's also very important to say that it is not about competition between Ethereum and RChain. If Ethereum would be the platform which achieves massive scalability and security, I would very, very welcome that. As any other blockchain which achieves the attributes of security, scalability, political decentralization, and future-proof. So like being sustainable is, I think sustainable, you connect it to plants, and like having a green world with sustainability and blockchain I connected to low power usage. And the ability to adapt, which means also having a good path for evolution in the sense of digital revolution, in the sense of how can we update its system and how flexible are we to run it in different environments. And RChain enables us to have the opportunity to run it as a private blockchain, as a consortium blockchain, or as a public blockchain, given the namespaces. And something I think many people from the Ethereum community can relate to is the concept of sharding. So in Ethereum, we use the mainnet, which is one of this big world computer. I like to hitchhike through the galaxy with the deep thought computer. I like to compare them a little bit. It's like very big, very slow.
Yeah, and could you tell more about that namespaces? Why is that important for the system? How does it work?
Let me go deeper into it. The comparison to Ethereum is they try to achieve scalability through taking, say, this supercomputer and then creating a second layer of supercomputers which are connected to the main computer. Okay, so you take the main computer, and on the second layer you take the small computers, put them in, and you can do calculations in each of those computers with the speed or faster than the main computer. But the problem is, if now two of those computers in the second layer want to communicate between each other, so inter-shard communication, this needs to go over the main computer again. So if we have like massive inter-shard communication, we cannot really scale there because this will congest the main net. So to compare it with RChain is the shards itself can be understood as namespaces which operate independent from like a main net. These are all networks or blockchains which you can communicate to if you trust them. And the rules in all of those different shards is also they can be different. So you can have different versions of Rholang running into it. You can have different versions of consensus in it. You can use the Casper protocol family, and then you can have different versions and implementations of them in different namespaces. But you need to decide if you trust this other network. If you trust it, you can communicate with each other, but this would mean that obviously the security relies on the trust of the other shard, or in this case, the namespace, to be precise.
Yes, and exactly. I also think like if you want to understand what is a namespace, you should probably first try to understand what is a name. And a name is something crucial within RChain because the Rholang, on which RChain is built, is based on the notion of sending and receiving processes on names. So communication and computation on this concurrent virtual machine happens by message passing, basically. And this message passing happens on names. And names, they can receive processes and they can send processes. And basically, so what a name is, a name is just there in the database, in the tuple space of RChain. And it's just listening on receiving something. And then what is a namespace? A namespace is a collection of all these names, which are all receiving something and listening to something. And they bundle them together and we call them a namespace. So a namespace can be an analogy to a blockchain as well. Because a blockchain is basically a set of collection of all kind of addresses. And these addresses, they can be a function or can send and receive something. But in RChain, we have these names which can listen and can send. And the namespace is a collection of addresses. And since we have this notion of concurrency, there can be multiple namespaces living concurrent next to each other.
Yeah, I want to elaborate on that and just want to draw the line with nature and like the world we live in, because this might be too abstract if you're new in the blockchain space, or too abstract if this is too technical. We're sitting here having that interview in a circle, 4 people. Listening on a name or listening on a channel means like, hey, Rinke. So Rinke reacts to it. So it was like, I was sending to the channel Rinke and he replied to me. He doesn't need to say Tim because this is like out of the context we're sitting in. It's clear that he means me. In RChain, in the language, he would write back to the channel I was communicating to Tim, so that I get that answer. If we speak about a namespace, we could say we are in this room. And this group in this room, if we had like loudspeakers on the ceiling, asking for all the attention of the people in the room XYZ we are sitting in, we would react to it. Okay, so this is the namespace. It's a group. And the beauty of this is it represents the reality, represents the nature we are living in, it represents the world we are living in. So if we take, say, for example, compared with the body, I like the presentation of Philipp Strauch today from RChain as well. He was comparing it with you have an organ, and every molecule in that organ belongs to the namespace of the organ heart, for example. So you can address things very clearly. Obviously, we need to have a way to do unique like names. But if you take, like for example, a location and combine it with a name, then you always get like a unique like address. So this is something which is not introduced into RChain right now, but I think it's very compelling to think about that. Because if I say Tim on a specific location, like in the Netherlands, in this room right now, there will be only one Tim who is like applicable to that attribute. And I know that there's another Tim on this conference, right? But given the situation that as a given time point, like right now, there's only one Tim. The other Tim is 20 to 40 meters away from here.
Okay, great. That sounds good.
Maybe you could tell us a bit, go back a little bit and tell us about the language you use, Rholang. You've named some of the characteristics already, but why it was created and why you're using it again, just because it's quite a complicated subject.
I agree.
Yeah, so I guess this is anyways is rather difficult to explain to your listeners on the podcast.
Yeah.
But I'll try to give it a go. So Rholang is a language on which all of RChain is being built. All the system contracts, they're all implemented in Rholang. But basically Rholang is a practical implementation of the row calculus. And the row calculus is just like the lambda calculus on which all the functional languages are built. It's just a branch of mathematics basically on which you can describe computation. And row calculus on its turn is based on the pi calculus. And basically this is in the row calculus, you have computation by passing messages, what I already said. And the row calculus combines this passing of messages with certain things like being able to add two numbers or do multiplication or, yeah.
The concurrency I think is very important as well. So one of the major innovations which happened between the pi calculus and the row calculus was the introduction of the ability to do concurrent, like with Rholang, right? I mean, there's the theoretical aspect, which is like pi calculus and row calculus, and then there is the implementation, which is Rholang. And with Rholang, you have concurrency. So this is the major innovation.
Yeah.
But there are other things which are mentioned by Craig Meredith, and I highly advise to reference, also search for that, Craig Meredith and row calculus, and because this gives you a better understanding behind the details. I'm not a mathematician. I understand the concepts. The most important things there are that they are provable correct, so that you can have mathematical proofs that something behaves in a specific expected way. This is also related to higher reflective orders and type theories. These are just the words to search on.
Yeah, do you maybe have like a very concrete example?
Yes.
I can maybe...
Yeah, I think Rinke can give also some specific.
Yeah.
Maybe we can work through the different words. So what does higher reflective order mean?
No, I thought I'd just explain everything what you can do with Rholang.
Oh,
maybe that makes it easier to understand.
Yes. So in Rholang you have names and processes. On names you can send processes, and you can also receive a process on a name. So on names, communication happen, and the process is kind of the communication. And then we define all the processes which can happen. So you have a process which is called send. You send on a name. Also, you have the process receive. But the process receive is connected to a continuation. So that means that receive, but once I receive, do the continuation with whatever I received. Then you have the process of do things concurrently. So you do two things at the same time. That can be, for example, send on name and receive on name at the same time.
And how would you use that then, for instance? What kind of process would use the simultaneous computation?
I'll come to that. So for example, once you have somebody selling 50 rubber ducks, for example. So that means he is listening on channel shop for message called buy. And then there are 51 people who want to buy a rubber duck. So they send buy on seller on channel shop, for example. But only 50 people obviously can buy a rubber duck. So one person will not be able to be matched to a correct sender who is listening. And in RChain, this is defined by consensus. So there is the consensus, which are the validators who have stake on the blockchain, and they decide which sends will be matched with which receives.
I can give you the real world analogy for that. Maybe that helps also to understand that. I like the market example. So you have a market in Shanghai, for example, and on that market you buy coffee. And in Ethereum, this would mean that your transaction that you bought this coffee is put on the all the transactions which are happening worldwide in a sequential order. This means the guy who's buying the coffee in Seattle needs to wait until your order in Shanghai is processed.
Yeah.
So they both compete in a sense with the computation slot on the Ethereum network. So this is itself does not happen concurrently. In RChain, it can happen in a very natural way concurrently because these transactions are mostly certain, not connected to each other. This means that the consensus protocol used, which is Ghost, they can bet on a future outcome of the blockchain. They are not directly related with each other, so they can happen in concurrency. There's a picture I have in mind when I think about nature and how the consensus are achieved with the Casper protocol.
So is that the same as the namespaces you were mentioning? So they both have a different namespace, so they can have
Shanghai market and, for example, Seattle market would be then two different namespaces.
Yeah.
Or they would form a interconnected situation, which is separate from the other ones, which enables them to achieve consensus in that region.
Yeah, because how does that work on as a chain? For Bitcoin or Ethereum is a linear chain, so everything gets added on. But in yours, things happen simultaneously. How do you deal with that in a sort of visual representation?
They have arms, so you have the chain which is built up, but you can agree on multiple transactions at the same time, and then it looks like you have arms which are created, which end at a specific point.
Branches from the chain which can branch out or converse back.
Also,
again.
what you have basically, I like the example with the shop in Shanghai and here. For example, you have this namespace in Shanghai where they're doing interactions together, and we have a namespace here where we're doing interactions together. But once we want to communicate, a person from Shanghai with me, basically we cannot do it because we are in a different namespace. So since we have this notion of concurrency and of combining two processes together to get one bigger process, we can basically create one higher level namespace, which is composed out of the namespaces Shanghai and Europe. And we can do a transaction, but only on this higher level namespace, which will obviously be more expensive since more validators have to be involved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that is a very important and good point. A picture which I wanted to compare it with is if you think about the brain, and there's a thought. It is usually that there is a potential, right? And then a thought is fired over axiom. So there is a nerve, so to say, which starts
firing, and you
have
an
and then you have a network of other connected cells which react to it and fire as well.
Yeah.
So what they use and what
fire if something is matched.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And coming to that matching of what it is, and there are some latest breakthroughs in neuroscience where they detected that every time when the axiom fires, that there is that there are peaks and a noise on the signal, and these noises, they are a pattern. Okay, so this could be a name or a pattern others are listening to. And only the cells which match this pattern, which are listening to those patterns, like a broadcast, will react to it. Because there's still the big question, why do not all fire when this fires, but only a subset fires? And this is exactly the reason, because there's an information pattern they react to. And this enables us to, if you think about a brain, you see that electrical explosion, right? In different spaces happening in concurrency, right? This is the picture I have in mind when I think about RChain running on a global scale where we achieve consensus. Okay.
Okay, and I read that RChain has its own token, the RHOX.
Rock.
Oh, it's a rock. Okay. These tokens were distributed in a private sale.
This is correct.
And but what are these tokens used for?
So at the moment, these tokens, they trade on the Ethereum network as a ERC20 token. Basically is nothing more than a promise of mapping all the rocks once the mainnet is launched with a genesis state to ref, and ref will be the internal token within RChain which all the validating is being done.
The native token, so to say. Then.
Do you need rocks to get the refs? Or?
So at the moment, the situation will be, if you want to get refs at mainnet launch, you need to have rocks, or you can mine them then in the mainnet. So there will be ways to get refs on the mainnet.
But even if you want to mine ref, you still need ref because it's a proof of stake. So if you want to mine ref, you at least have to start with internal amount of an amount of ref.
Yeah. So this is definitely something. If you don't put something at stake in proof of stake, they will not accept you as a validator because you don't have something to lose.
So if you want to be part of RChain when it goes on mainnet, then you have to get those rocks somewhere now.
The best way to get rocks right now is to use the bounty system and to participate in the contribution as a developer or solving a specific problem which is related to RChain.
Well, we come to what you can do in the code later on in this interview. But it sounds pretty good. So you have to find some rocks somewhere and get them.
You can also buy them on the exchange.
You can also buy them. Okay.
And we will see more exchange adoption as well. So at the moment, probably we will see that you can even pretty much in the sense of shapeshift them in the future. It's a good time to get into it before we see testnet adoption, but this is obviously not an investment advice.
Of course not. Earlier today, we here at Blockchain Innovation Week, we did together a workshop on Rholang. The questions I had when I was preparing this interview is, okay, can we use a Rholang already on a testnet or something? We saw that it's possible in a cloud solution. Maybe you can tell the audience something about this.
Yes, so currently RChain is in version 0.3. 0.3 doesn't include communication between nodes. So that means that you can run Rholang codes, you can have the storage space which will be there even if you shut your computer off and on again. But it's not possible yet to have this replicated storage space between all the nodes and communicate together by sending messages. What you can do is you can write Rholang code and actually see the tuple space changing on your local machine. You are working with RChain.cloud, which is actually made by Dutch people. And RChain.cloud is doing all the setup for you. So you can just write your code, press run, and you see the output. That's very easy because putting it on your own computer requires some computing skills and frustration.
Yeah, it was a very quick workshop. It was not like setting up for 2 hours. It was just going to the website and write some code and push run, and it ran. So it was pretty good.
Did you like it?
Yes, really.
I think it's all about the ability to be convenient with the adoption. So the developer tools are key for adoption, and I'm very proud of these guys which wrote RChain or which built up the RChain.cloud, which is in the end nothing else than setting it up a Docker container on the cloud and making that service available. It's not huge magic. Everyone could, in theory, just do the same setup. What I'm really proud of is these are co-op members which came to the Boulder developer conference, had their first time exposure to the technology, and they directly used that knowledge to adopt it. And today, these nodes are run also through the budget of the bounty system. So I think this really shows how people can contribute very efficiently, and this is also a very, very big step forward, because without it, we would speak about how to set up the Docker container in a workshop.
Yeah. So are there any companies that are thinking about using it?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you have some big projects lined up? I mean,
I can only speak for the general structure. So there's also investment arm of RChain, which is called Ventures.
Pythia and Reflective Ventures.
Yes, Reflective Ventures. Yeah, and Pythia.
Yeah.
And they are investing into companies which will be part of the early adopters of the ecosystem. And there are other companies like in Block.io, which I initiated as a blockchain consultancy company, because we truly believe that this is a very, very important technology which will find adoption enterprise as well. And will find a lot of adoption in all those startups which are already positioned in the Ethereum blockchain space, which want to have the security to not rely on one blockchain, but on multiple blockchains, and which are waiting to have a resolution for the security and the scalability problem. So this is for everyone. If this promise if this promise holds of the attributes RChain is promising, we will see a massive adoption here.
And when do you think we can sort of see it in production?
Yeah, testnet, obviously. So testnet is publicly announced for end of July. As any software project, there are some hurdles you don't know before. RChain is moving very, very fast right now.
Extremely quickly.
So this is very good, because we all need that infrastructure to move the whole space forward. But this means also to be realistic about that, means that it's a testnet, right? So we will see some problems in some spaces. That is what it's for. I think I only can invite everyone who is able to play around with that and to test it massively, to try to break it as much as possible, so we can learn from all those experiences to ensure that the mainnet release is a stable release.
And you say that a lot of companies are thinking about using it. We see that companies are always a bit scared for the openness of Ethereum. How is that with RChain?
Yeah, so I think there are quite a lot of companies who are looking into this, but it's a really new technology. And I think until the point that we can see a running testnet, the companies will not be queuing to get funding from RChain. However, once this testnet is live, which is after the summer, and it's working, which I expect it will do, I think there will be a massive increase of interest. And in that sense, it's special that we are here today as RChain Europe at the Blockchain Week, since everybody here gets exposure already to RChain before testnet launch. And yes, also this podcast, obviously, your listeners will know about RChain before the masses know about it.
Yeah, and that's a great bridge to the next question I had in mind was that yesterday you had your first meetup of the European arm of RChain. Why did you start the meetup?
So the meetup, we came up with the idea of having this meetup because we were with quite a big group, about 17 people from Germany and from Netherlands. We were to Boulder because we were all interested in this new technology. And for most of us, it was something completely new. But we were basically learning for 5 days and trying to understand RChain. And once we came home, we wanted to do something with this knowledge. So we decided to do a meetup. One reason is to kind of order our knowledge, like put it into a good system and put it in a nice presentation. And the second thing is, by doing this, we wanted to teach people what we learned in Boulder.
I fully agree. Like Boulder was a huge step forward to decentralize RChain and decentralizing the RChain community, because before that it was mainly a US-based community with the European adoption, and also now we have seen like unofficial meetups coming up, like in China, in Croatia. We see them spawning, which is a very, very good sign for distribution of knowledge. But yes, going to Boulder, coming back, it was like very important for us to move that forward, that also people in Europe can develop with RChain. And Rinke did a very, very good job in organizing the meetup. I'm very grateful that he took all the workload on, because obviously there are so many things happening that one person can do very limited amount for such a big project. But this is, I think, what it's all about. If we bring the knowledge to other people, they can participate And we had the luck to learn from the people which invented it. And by learning that, we created our own language, how we can pass it on. And that's a different language than the one which is used by those people which invented it, because that's a totally different universe. They're into it much longer. So we help to enable easier adoption with a language which is broader, understandable in the blockchain space.
Yeah, and what I also liked is that actually to our meetup there were about, I think, 8 people who were already RChain co-op member. And for the first time they had the opportunity to kind of come together and speak about RChain and talk together, and also meet people who are new to RChain and who are interested in it. And that was another goal which we had. Like, we are obviously very enthusiastic about RChain, and we wanted to spread this enthusiasm and get a bigger group so we can have more impact in the future.
Yeah, so what would you say to anybody to get them on board? Like, why would anyone become part of the RChain community?
Of the RChain Europe community? Well, I think that's like asking somebody, why would you want to study blockchain? Once somebody understands blockchain, you get this kind of brain fuck. This is also something which happens if you understand RChain. I mean, the language is so much more like nature and so beautiful, I think, and so many possibilities that we are barely scratching the surface. So why would somebody become part of the RChain Europe team? Well, once you understand it and you kind of grasp the full concept, you will want to become part of us.
You'll see the beauty of scalability and
security.
Yeah.
Right. But let me elaborate on that as well, because I think this is a very good question. Why should somebody take our care? And for me personally, it is not the name RChain, but the idea behind it. And the idea behind it is having that secure, scalable, sustainable, future-proof concept, which I hope we can also enhance by achieving political decentralization. And this is not a thing we could find nice to have. This is a requirement to survive as a species, because if we are not able to tackle all the risk we have on a global scale today, if we are not able to find new ways of coordination, it's very, very likely that we fail as a species. Because what we did the last 150 years by exploiting the planet is creating, like, for example, global warming, mass extinction of species through intoxication of like our environment, breaking economic systems. And if we don't find a way to, for example, regulate on a global scale, or to coordinate on a global scale to regulate on a global scale, do you think that, for example, board of directors of an international company is interested in getting sustainable if they are like limiting their own revenues by 20%?
But how do you see RChain contributing to such a system where,
Yes.
because it's, you could say it's a blockchain problem, but it's more of a behavioral problem?
Yeah, so let me connect those two things, right? So one of the main engines in society is the global banking system and the rules of the global banking system. A sustainable, scalable blockchain, which is also rolling out a new compute infrastructure, can first of all provide a network for financial transactions, which we see already in other blockchains, which is good. But this is only one part of it. Rolling out a new governance model is the second part we need. Because if we want to, for example, have decentralized global organizations.
So not just governance of your blockchain, of the RChain, but governance of the actual world, the country.
I'm speaking about multi-level governance. So we have, for example, layer 1 governance, which is for protocol governance. But if we have, for example, communities which want to contribute in any sense, for example, also in boundary systems, if we don't want to make that dependable on like single decision makers in those systems, we need to create systems which are indeed representing governance structures. And this is something which is directly related to everything what is related to society. I mean, what is a government itself? What is a social network like Facebook, right? I mean, these are structures. If you ask Mark Zuckerberg, he's looking for society operation systems.
Yeah. And I think actually funny historical remark is that the founder of RChain, Greg Meredith, actually wanted himself to start a social network on top of Ethereum. But he failed because Ethereum just cannot handle a social network, because
millions of transactions.
Once the social network gets popular and everybody on a Facebook scale wants to send messages on this network, Ethereum just crashes.
Is insane, yeah.
So he is a very smart person. He's a mathematician, a computer scientist, and worked before with process calculi. So the moment he failed with making the social network on Ethereum, he just gathered a group of very smart people together, and he started building RChain, on which he wants, I expect him to want it, or at least to delegate it, to build a social network on top of blockchain.
Directly.
Cool.
Yeah.
So these are the most important applications which we need, which are the communication applications. And the social network is part of that communication infrastructure, which is independent. And if we look at all the other problems we see, like with media, for example, media influencing and all that stuff, we are not getting around to have an independent messaging system if we want to coordinate in a new way. So this is directly connected there. Another story which is related what Craig is telling why we need that is if we think about global warming and the displacement of all the people which are living near the coast right now, we don't have the technology to coordinate that massive movement of people around the planet. So this means we have problems with the Syria crisis, which 10 million people coming to Europe. This is a joke compared to what is to come there. So also if we look at the Middle East crisis right now.
And how is RChain going to help with that?
Yes, we need to have ways how to do decentralized governance, which represents the possibility of doing decisions concurrently. Because hierarchically organized systems rely on decisions made by those leaders.
Yeah.
But if we get too many problems, they nor have the expertise nor the ability to keep up with all the problems coming up to solve them. So we need to have a way to organically assemble to solve those problems. So this is pretty much what we are speaking about. And there's another thing which has to do with consciousness. Because if we want to solve those problems, we need to have people which step up and say, it is about my business if this planet is in a good health.
Yeah. So you want to make people more autonomous, basically, in a sense, that they make their own decision and live their own lives and come together and take responsibility for their own actions and decisions.
Very well said. So those are the people we are looking for, which I personally can only speak for the people I'm looking for there. But this is the reason why I work with Rinke, because he is a person who takes responsibility and who also looks in the outside world and sees the problem we have and is serious about them.
Yeah, so very cool. I think you have very idealistic ideas. That's very nice to see. So thank you. I think we have a final question for you.
Yeah, we always ask our guests to choose a symbol that we put on our chart with Dutch symbols and tell us why you chose it.
I have one.
Okay, go for it.
I need to. I'm not sure if I remember it correctly. The Dutch waffle.
Stroopwafel.
Stroopwafel. I love those. I always look in the German supermarkets if they have them, but unfortunately they don't have them. But here you can get them everywhere. I love this. It's just the best thing ever.
Cool.
The best cookie ever.
Yeah, so I'll probably go for the speed skates because I have good memories to those. I like skating, and especially skating on nature in the open.
On actual ice.
It's last year it was possible, but last year I was in Belgium. In Belgium it was not possible. But I remember 6-7 years ago you could speed skate everywhere in Netherlands, and it was great.
I remember that story, which is deep rooted in the Netherlandic mindset, right? That you have that 13 city tour where you can ice skate.
The Elfstedentocht.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone is waiting for that.
Yeah, for an eternity.
Yeah, but I found it very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, thank you guys for having an interview with us. It's you have quite a complicated subject actually, so I think it's good for people to look it up and get some more info.
Yes.
But hopefully this helps to make it a little bit more clear.
You can good websites if you're a developer is go to developer.rchain.coop. Also on YouTube you have very good resources about RChain, and we hope that the live screen capture of the RChain meetup from last week, from yesterday, will be there as well.
Yeah, we will ensure that this will go online like the next 14 days. And maybe as a short announcement, if you hear that anywhere soon, this would mean that we are planning right now the meetups for Berlin and London. So stay tuned. We will definitely communicate that on Twitter as well.
When can people expect that?
So the meetup in Berlin in the next like 6 weeks. But maybe we pull the London meetup before that. So they will happen in a 4 to 6 week.
So the end of June.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
You can you'll be updated if you become a member of meetup.com/RChain dash
Europe?
RChain-Europe.
I think Europe. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
but
it's
RChain
Europe.
dash.
Yeah,
Is it dash?
We ensure that you get that. Just look at maybe some things I definitely put on my Twitter handle, for sure. So this is like the main information source if I push things out, but we will have also like websites, and the meetup group itself will be also a main point to find out what meetups are in the pipeline.
And you also plan another meetups here in Amsterdam?
We will most likely be planning these in the upcoming days. So it's meetup.com/RChain-Europe.
And we will come back to Amsterdam. I strongly believe Amsterdam is, or say the Netherlands in general, are a very important hotspot for blockchain technologies, as Berlin is, as London is. And I haven't seen like more active communities anywhere else in Europe. So I'm pretty sure that we will circle around there.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you guys for being here, and we'll see you around then.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe on our channels, as we will have more interesting podcasts coming soon. This episode was sponsored by MoveOpen, your partner for innovative blockchain concepts. Find out more about MoveOpen on moveopen.nl.